Has WoW become overly complicated? What is this?
Is overly complex today. WoW is overly complex today, and it's keeping new players from coming into the game.
Yeah.
Raids require too many
God.
weak auras and add-ons to help you react to mechanics. Classes need a degree in physics, experience in engineering, and the ability to stick a cylinder block into a
actually
square
insane.
hole with your eyes closed, somebody else's hand, from 5 feet away without speaking the same language or being from the same planet. It gets a bit too much, and although for long-time players the added level of death is refreshing and challenging, sometimes it can be taken too far. So let's see where WoW went too far with the complexity. Starting simple and where most people take their first steps, leveling. For a new player, all I have to say is, good luck. You'll be
I will just say, to be fair, I think what they've done with the Exile's Reach for retail is actually quite a good way of making leveling good. For a new I could imagine as a new player getting into retail, going to Exile's Reach is actually pretty decent. They teach you how to do quests, they teach you how to do elite stuff, they teach you the dungeons and everything like that. But I can imagine after that, then it gets a little bit much. But I think the Exile's Reach is pretty decent. But we'll see what he says about it and we'll figure it out. Leveling after Exile's Reach gets really bad though. This I would tend to agree with. I'm trying to like put it into perspective of a new player coming into the game for the first time. I, as like a WoW veteran, actually, when I did the leveling with Anbani, we did like a duo leveling challenge a while back, and it was actually very confusing what to do, even as a WoW vet, right?
Shoved into Battle for Azeroth for some reason, which has no transition into the Dragonflight story whatsoever. To be fair, neither the Shadowlands, and this is a byproduct of the devs wanting to get rid of that storyline ASAP.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make it easier for new people to understand what the hell is going on.
That's true.
What is World of Warcraft, and what does leveling have to do with playing the new expansion?
It must be really weird just being thrown into a random story where like you have no idea who any of them are, and it's like you're supposed to follow this narrative while you're leveling, right? At least Dragonflight will be the new player experience, yeah.
Since WoW has soon 20 years of story and expansions, it will be harder and harder to make them relevant. And leveling has stopped being relevant probably in the first expansion, when the game became all about the end game and max level. So long as end game starts at max level and all the actual content starts at max level, leveling will only be a means to an end, which doesn't help people that they acquire close to no benefit from leveling outside maybe the last 10 levels they do in Dragonflight that starts them with the reputations, professions, and world exploration. And even
I also think, yeah,
that is me being incredibly generous here.
I also think that, like, yeah, it is 90% of endgame, but the problem with WoW is that the people that play WoW are the people that play WoW, right? There's not really many new players that much coming into World of Warcraft anymore, because it's been here for 20 years. So, like, they kind of make the new expansions for the people that already are invested into the game and the people that are loyal to the game, right? You know, I think in a way that's why SOD was a good new change of pace, and a lot of people came out into play the game from the outside because it wasn't as overwhelming. Okay, here you have the base version of Classic WoW with a little bit extra, right? Retailers, when you get to max level, you make an alt and you start again. That's just World of Warcraft. I mean, that's just WoW. That's MMOs in a nutshell, right? You get your character up, you gear him up, you blast it, and you're like, okay, let me make a new character, and you make an alt and you go again. That's just the MMO grind, right? I couldn't bring myself to keep playing retail after Legion. That's fair. I mean, I don't know. It's a different experience, right?
The best solution for this is something we already have, and that is Exile's Reach, the alternative to leveling that people can take on their second character onwards.
This is good.
If this mode can be made to take you from level 1 to 60, or whatever the new expansion's level start will be, while explaining to people what dungeons and raids are, how professions work, how forming groups and getting into guilds is, it can solve a lot of barriers of entry for new people. The current gearing system is too complex for new and existing people as well.
God.
You have
Dude, it is really fucking confusing, man. I remember when we were doing Razageth, like the raid, I don't remember the name of the raid, but the first raid in Dragonflight, bro, to me it was confusing personally. Not this part here, but like where you had to like buy all the mats and you had to get the mats, you had to forge them, and I don't know. When I played, it was pretty frustrating, and then you had to figure out like the full abyss and like what was not good and everything like that. I'm just saying that it can be very overwhelming from a new player. Like obviously, I kind of understood what was going on because you know I played it for a while, but it's a lot of convoluted, like different things that gets really confusing all in all, right? Mac Attack, thank you for the 8 months Prime. It's not overwhelming at all. Imagine you're a new player coming into World of Warcraft, and then you see all of that. I feel like that would be quite overwhelming, but perhaps I'm a little bit jaded on that.
I have 6 total item types from Explorer to Adventurer, Veteran, Champion, Hero, and Myth, and all can be upgraded using currencies, which there are a total of 5 of. Both the currencies and the gear can be obtained from multiple sources, with higher difficulty rewarding higher item level, enabling rewards. The issues start when a lot of this is gated, and it also overlaps to the point where you need a spreadsheet to keep track of.
Bro, I remember I had to download some sort of a Weak Aura, and it was the most weird shit ever. Like, maybe I'm stupid, but gearing in Dragonflight, at least in the beginning when I played, was really confusing. It was very weird, man. No matter what you do, you get bags full of currencies and upgrades, and you have no idea what to do with them. Yeah, there's just like a billion different currencies, and you have no idea what to do with half of them, right? You need a very high IQ to play retail. I feel like it's kind of the same thing as Path of Exile, where the majority of people that played the game don't even understand what's going on. They just download like some sort of like a pre-made like spreadsheet or pre-made add-on that's made by some YouTuber, and then they just follow that, right? That's pretty much it.
Of it. We made a gearing video to get your also 480 item level, and the simplest advice we could give people is to just do plus 18s and bypass 90% of the gearing issues in terms of item types, currency types, and vault rewards. When that is the solution to your gearing system, ignoring the majority of the content, then we have a problem. Why not just get rid of the item types entirely and leave currencies in charge of what eye levels you can upgrade? You can make it so only aspect crests get the items to the highest item level, and the aspect crest can only be looted from mythic raids and plus 18s or higher. That way, players don't need a subscription to Microsoft Office for their Excel portfolios when it comes to gearing.
It is just confusing as fuck, though. It is. Way too many buttons, can't compete without add-ons and weak auras. The game is really overwhelming. That's why people play SOD. I do agree. Like, it is like a big reason why SOD and vanilla is very appealing. Because it's just simple, right? And it's a massive reason why, like, competitive WoW ain't that popular. Because nobody fucking understands what's going on when Peekaboo is shadow stepping, focus targeting, macroing over to, like, the evoker who's flying to the other side of the map, who's like, you don't know what's going on. Like, you can't follow it. Like, when you're watching, like, let's say you're watching CSGO, you know, okay, this guy shoots that guy, he wins. You don't know what went into, like, you know, arena when Peekaboo won. What does that take? That's true, though. That's literally true. If I'm a WoW player, right? I played WoW for a while. I'm not a retail Andy, but if I watch really high-end arena, I have no idea what's going on. And then imagine, like, someone who's trying to get into WoW that, like, has no idea what WoW even is. It's like, what the fuck is happening, all right?
There's no good enough reason that I have to load the same item in 3 or more.
You don't know how one person knew the other person was going to be in CS. What, you don't know how one person knew where the other person was going to be in CSGO. Well, they start on the opposite side of the map, and one of them is like, you know, terrorist. The other guy is counter-terrorist, right? You're getting old, or you don't know which guns are BIS in CSGO. Bro, you know a handgun is worse than an assault rifle. You know a shotgun is for close range. You know a snipe. What are you on about? No, that's cooked. Everybody, dude, if you look at a gun, you see a shotgun, you're like, okay, close range. Sniper, long range. Handgun, single shots, right? Come on. Dude, what the hell, man? No, I don't like, that's weird, man.
Variations and use 3 or more different currencies from 2 to 3 drop locations to reach the end goal of getting the best gear I can. Item level, explorer, adventurer, veteran, champion, hero, myth, flight stones, whelp crest, drake crest, worm crest, aspect crests, and these enchanted for crafting professions, which I'm not even gonna touch. Too much. It's just too much, and it's not interesting. If you want to raid on heroic or mythic, better be prepared with a list of add-ons that can make the fights possible, or at least not a total pain in the ass for your group. This has been a back and forth topic for a while. People made weak auras to make boss fights more efficient, and the devs made boss fights harder to challenge people using weak auras, which in turn made more complex weak auras to make the fights more efficient, turning future raid designs into even more complex 3D chess problem-solving minigames. Not sure who has to give here, but we got to a point where Mythic Niltarion was a fight that used the weak aura to showcase the layout of the boss room you were in, where the walls were, and where you had to go depending on what mechanic was happening. I
mean, weak auras is like they are really, really, really broken and really strong, obviously, but people will use them if they're there, right? If they're there and they're made, then people will use it. You don't need weak auras to have to do retail mechanics, that's bait. Yeah, I don't think you need them either, for sure. They do make stuff easier, I will definitely say that. But you don't need them to, like, you know, raid and do stuff like that.
Add-on starts telling you how to play the game, we have a problem. Obviously, not everyone gets to clear end raid bosses like Mythic Niltarion, but this is an extreme example of how much of the fight is being played by colors and shapes on your screens, and how much by not you making decisions. Some people could...
Highest difficulty, you definitely need them. Yeah, probably. I mean, if you want to go really high, like the, you know, mythic rating insane, like difficulty, then for sure you probably do need them. But there's a pretty decent entry of barrier where you can still have an okay time and like not need weak auras, I would say so, right? Try and finish mythic without weak aura, see how your guild keeps you around. Yeah, if you're trying to like go into like higher, like, you know, rated stuff, you definitely do need weak auras, and you definitely do need DPM and all those things. Do I play retail anymore? I haven't played since the second patch, since the second raid. I don't know when that was, but since that I haven't played. I don't understand why it's a problem to not understand high-level arena without experience, otherwise it wouldn't be high-level Lamau. No, I'm just saying that even, like, it's a hard game to get into. And I think that's why a lot of people, there's not a lot of new players coming into WoW. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad game. It's just hard to understand, right?
Likely play the fights without add-ons, but they would have to not play with their friends that cannot do the same. And sometimes even playing without add-ons or weak auras becomes incredibly inefficient when you have to have reaction times to mechanics that cannot span more than a second long. Okay. That's not necessarily new to gaming, but I don't believe that's something that has a place in WoW. Sure, difficulty can exist, but there has to be a line you draw where that difficulty forces people to use add-ons and weak auras or not be able to engage with the content because they don't have the reaction time of a 17-year-old. The difficulty in raiding was always mostly in getting all 20 or so people to do the same thing, even if it was a simple thing.
Nah, man, it's about getting 5 players to carry the rest. Alright, you get 5 to 10 good players, and then they carry the rest of the raid. That's always how it goes.
And not as a big of a focus on individual skill level, which take us to the second big issue with raiding. Too many mechanics, mostly complex ones, put a lot of responsibility on a singular player, which more often than not becomes a do-or-die mechanic where if failed, the entire raid wipes. That is not fun and definitely pushes using external help to be able to assign people to the mechanic and making sure it will be done properly.
This highly depends on the difficulty of raids though. If you play normal raid in retail, it's like, yeah, you can make, there's obviously some mechanics that are gonna one-shot, but like most of it is pretty forgiving, honestly. If you go on heroic and mythic, you definitely do need to be aware of what you're doing though. You know? It's not like we had this in the first raid tier ever as well. I think, I don't necessarily agree with this fully, I would say, right? Raiding is boring, that's subjective, right?
We need fewer mechanics.
Yeah, this does definitely seem a little bit catered towards like the casual player versus the you know, the hardcore player. But I do think there's definitely some truth to the matter that WoW is a quite convoluted and complicated game, and it like makes a lot of people not want to get into it because it is quite a lot. But I think that's also just the nature of MMOs. MMOs are extremely complicated. You know, they really are. It's like living a second life, dude. You know what I mean? Heroic and Mythic requires efficiency, but LFR normal doesn't. Yeah, exactly. Like, do whatever you want, right?
That target individual players, which if they die, wipe the rest of the raid. That severely limits new people getting into raiding and adds to the necessity of weak cards and other add-ons being used.
Like higher ranks in CSGO? Trexpo, are you still on this CSGO topic? Listen, Trexpo, literally you cannot tell me that CSGO is as confusing to a new player that has never seen the game as WoW 3v3 Arena. Are you insane? CSGO, 2 teams, shoot guns, easy clap. Good luck explaining 3v3 Arena what's going on to people that's never seen it before. It's not as confusing, but you can't compare 2 different genres. I just did. It's 2 games, and both of those games have a competitive scene. Is that competitive scene hard to get into as a new player trying to understand the game? You know?
Constant scaling content is fun, but added affixes that forces you to play a different game is not. And I'm talking about situations.
Counter-Strike is just straightforward what you have to do. Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. It's easy as a spectator to watch Counter-Strike for the first time and be like, oh, okay, this guy shot that guy, he won. What about a new player, a new person that's trying to get into WoW Arena, watching AWC or whatever the hell, like, or Mythic Plus? Try explaining to them what's going on and what's the reason why Gingy won there, you know?
Added affixes that forces you to play a different game is not. And I'm talking about situations where you have to do your rotation for your class and then stop engaging with the pack or your party and then swap your attention to this other thing instead. Inherently, that's not really bad, but also not the reason I am here in the dungeon, I mean. If I am a DPS, I am there to kill monsters, not ruin my rotation synergy, dash across the room to handle this one thing that's an obstacle, then go back to what I was doing. If it's a dungeon mechanic, that's fine, but when you add affixes on top of those dungeon mechanics already, it stops being fun and becomes an extra layer of mechanics I need to handle. It's not about skill here. It's not hard to dispel an afflicted ghost.
Okay, this is kind of cooked. I think it's kind of cooked. I don't agree with this. I do agree that affixes can be a pain in the butt, but saying that it's not about skill is kind of like a little bit weird, I think. Like, dealing with the affixes is literally about skill. Like dude, it really is. For sure.
It's, however, annoying when I have to change my talent.
It's how you skill. Yeah, the higher you can... Because, like, the lower keys you do, there's just not a lot of affixes, right? Thanks, Brands.
In a self-harming way to bring a utility that wasn't made naturally available to me by the spec's design and use it in the middle of my potion bloodlust and 3 seconds left of my snapshot window, completely gimping my damage performance for the next 2 minutes, which is the main reason I am here to begin with. I am all for dungeons being designed so classes can use their utility kits to handle problems, but the way these problems are implemented feel forced and unnatural, causing obligatory friction that a lot of people like to classify as difficulty with a just get good solution. Play Cuphead, guy. Do the Valkyries in God of War on the highest difficulty if you want.
I mean, I don't know. I don't really agree with this personally. I think he just doesn't like affixes and he doesn't like the difficulty of it. I think some affixes in Mythic Plus can be very, very annoying, but saying that it doesn't require skill, I definitely do not agree with that. Dude, it's hard dealing with 4 different affixes while trying to time the key, while trying to, like, you know, make sure you have the right stuff.
Want a skill challenge, and let me do my Deathmark window on my Assassination Rogue in peace. Incorporeal and Afflicted are some of the worst affixes added and the best examples for this. Although boring and gatekeeping, Fortified, Tyrannical, Bursting, Bolstering, Raging are mostly fine. Still needs some look at, of course, as all affixes do, but better than the stop healing your party, stop dispelling poisons from your party, and deal with this other non-dungeon thing instead. The spells get ridiculous on bosses like the Throne of the Tides Shaman boss, when you have Afflicted to be dispelled and you are already juggling one dispel on your party for one of the 2 Flame Shock debuffs.
But that's the difficulty though. That's the difficulty, right? That's how it gets harder, and that's how you push those keys harder and harder, like bigger and bigger, you know? You don't come to get ranks where it's responded to go to the same as WoW. Casual players, it's the same. I really no. I don't want to like keep talking about the CS:GO thing. I what I'm trying to say with the CS:GO argument is that I'm just trying to say it is easier to understand what's happening in a CS:GO competitive match than it is in a World of Warcraft arena 3v3 at the highest level. Like it really is. It's difficult understanding what's happening in high level arena. Like, dude. There's no shot. If I'm watching someone play arena at the highest level, I have no idea what the hell is happening. If I'm watching a CS:GO match, I still know, okay, this, you know, I still kind of know what's going on. It's easier to spectate. Yeah, that doesn't mean that I'm not saying that I'm playing it. You know, I'm not playing CS:GO at the highest level, obviously, you know, but it's just not good. It's not a good watching game, right? In that regard.
Healing the other dispel because you don't have 2 dispels, and a 3rd unexpected dispel pops and nobody in the party can handle it. This limits the composition of groups that can clear the content in that very moment. Some of these affixes are annoying in low keys, making me feel like I have to stop playing WoW and do them instead. And on higher keys, it makes classes like Evokers mandatory to cover the lack of utility other classes have or don't have, further gatekeeping classes and specs from clearing higher content in a world where we want players to feel like their spec contributes to the value of the group. Overall, affixes are a problem, but for the sake of the video, we will only talk about the complicated part, which ends up as an annoyance and not a fun obstacle to overcome for a 2 in 5 chances of looting 1 in 9 items at the end of the dungeon if you get it in time.
I think that's kind of subjective though, if you enjoy affixes or not. I think some affixes are definitely bullshit. Like, obviously, but I don't agree with that overall take.
For the most part, specs are getting better and better at being designed and feeling nice to play, but the fact that all specs require guides to play properly is still bad. It is a touchy line between death and simple, since not one formula is 100% correct, but there are outliers that take it too far. Arcane Mage, for example, has a complex rotation that's incredibly pretentious about who you target and how you target, what buttons you press, and how many of them you press. Combat often forces you out of your rotation and nukes your performance. If we're going to have complex specs, for which I am an advocate, then we have to make them less punished by combat design, to the point of people being better off respecking 2 alternatives. Brewmaster.
Yeah, I mean, listen, dude. There is extremes on both sides of this. I played an Arms Warrior in Shadowlands. My rotation was to press Condemn. That was it. I pressed my cooldowns and I spammed Condemn. That was the entire rotation, and I fucking loved it. So you can still play stuff that doesn't require that super, you know, crazy stuff to like do well. But obviously, yeah, most classes nowadays are more, you know, they are more complicated because, you know, you gotta add more stuff eventually to the game, right? Or else it just like kind of stalemates.
Hard to play and rewarding at the same time, which is fine, but the button bloat is too much. A lot of the buttons don't have a lot to do with the spec tanking. You can be testy about every bit of tiny DR you get, but with that logic you can justify adding infinite buttons so long as they give a tiny bit of tankiness.
I personally don't like the crazy, insane billion buttons you gotta press. I like less. I think less is more when it comes to that. But that's my personal preference with it. That's how I see it.
It needs to have impactful buttons that function with the kit without turning the spec into a glorified DPS. I'm talking about you, Jadewind. Outlaw Rogue, one of the funnest specs in the game as of today.
I love casting Roll the Bones and having a weird RNG mechanic where like, oh, if I get the good rolls, I can do damage. If I get bad rolls, I don't do shit. I love just playing a casino spec, dude.
Burst windows and spammy abilities is what WoW needs a bit more of, but I would be lying to say that this doesn't get exhausting after a while.
I don't like this spec.
Not sure how to look at this particular one. I love the spec, and it is one of my mains at the moment because it plays the way it does. But I cannot help but acknowledge that mechanically, not everyone can play Outlaw, and maybe that's okay. We should have specs that even button mashers like me can enjoy, while Assassination is a nicer, slower counterpart for rogue lovers that don't want carpal tunnel. But
yeah, I think there should be options, and I think that's fair. Why do you hate this guy? I don't hate him. I'm just trying to like argue for what I think, right, and stuff like that. BM Hunter press 2 buttons to be top DPS. I think it's good that there's different specs for different people, though, right? So you can play whatever you enjoy.
At that point, Assassination needs to be close to evenly balanced, so people don't feel forced to play Outlaw, which unfortunately isn't the case. So people do feel forced to play Outlaw, a spec that some of us cannot actually play. And these specs aside, we have too many buffs and procs across the board. It gets hard to keep track of everything that happens with your spec when there aren't enough rows to display your buffs. This gets translated into combat when you have 100 damage events from hits of a few hundred damage each to crits of 700k.
MMOs are confusing. That's just what it is. That's why, oh my god, I'm gonna get into this again. That's why there's not a lot of MMOs in like esports. Because it's just too confusing to watch. It's very confusing, man.
It doesn't make sense numbers-wise for my character to do 200k DPS, but still have hits of 3,000 or less. What even are numbers at this point? Trinkets, files, weapons all have minor damage procs. Every spec deals a gazillion little damage events that fill the screen with numbers. This makes numbers pointless, makes the screen busy and exhausting to look at. One of the big reasons people prefer Classic, I would imagine, is big hits when you press big buttons.
I do agree that, like, I mean, dude, I'm a Classic Andy. Like, bro, like, it is what it is. I obviously prefer fewer buttons that, like, you know, when I press my button it hurts a lot more. I like that. I'm a Classic Andy, what can I say? But that's a personal preference.
Simple. The best example for this is Balance Druid, which has damage ticks from Moonfire, damage ticks from Sunfire, damage ticks from Astral Smolder, damage ticks from Shooting Stars, damage ticks from Starfall,
sounds like a beat.
Damage ticks from Mushrooms, damage ticks from Stellar Flare, if talented, damage ticks from Starfire Cleave, sometimes damage sticks from tier sets.
Some people like
damage sticks from trinkets or embellishments. Damage sticks from Fury of Valoon. On one hand, it's nice to have many ways of dealing damage and many cool buttons to press. But on another hand, I have no idea what any of the numbers on my screen mean. So what's the purpose of even having numbers on screen then? At that point,
it's different specs, man. Like you some people like the dots and a lot of small damage. Some people like big juicer, you know, executes.
If the question has to be asked, then there is a flaw in the system. On top of this, all specs require simming and high dedication to research in order to play optimally, and it isn't great. Although sometimes it can be fun, but only to some extent. While it's always a good thing to have super players, the gap today between an average player and a super player is way too big, and this is purely how the specs / spells / talents / gears are built and all the multiple interactions between them. Even
I will say, you really don't have to do this, though. You don't have to sim if you don't want to. You can just be like, okay, what stats do I need? Okay, I need crit, I need haste. Okay, get crit haste, right? That's it. You don't need to, like, go super crazy with it. You know, I don't think simming is a big issue, personally. I think it's there for the people that want to do it. And if you don't want to do it, then just don't do it, right? You don't have to sim it. Yeah, but then you press your big button in Classic and it misses. Having to get a hit cap is fun. You don't need to sim your character to get hit cap in Classic. You just need, okay, I need 9% hit. How much hit do I have? I have 8%. Okay, I need 1% more hit. That's not simming, right?
The simplest spec cannot be at its best without the use of external tools and websites.
Yeah.
The fact that we need weakaras and add-ons in order to play some specs or be able to go through some raid fights or dungeons is just bad.
Holy wait. How many combo points do Rogue have now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You have 9 combo points? What the fuck? Wait, is that a thing now?
Add-ons and
You can get 7 with talents? I assume every one of these is a combo point, right? That's insane. What the hell? There's 7 max plus 1 in sub plus 1 in rogue. Oh my gosh. Look at that enemy bar. Yeah, oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 7 here. There's 7 there. I see that.
weakaras should be optional and the quality of life improvement, not
Yeah, but if you want to be good and not get kicked from raids because underperforming, you need to sim your character and read your rotation. I don't think you need to sim your character to do well. I do think you need the proper gear, but you don't necessarily need to go and sim your character. If you know what stats you need, then you just get those items, you prio those items with those stats, and then you're good. Right? But yeah, you do need to know how to play your character for sure.
required to play. I was talking to Marcellian the other day, and he remembers being pissed that the game became so easy back in WoD, but now, looking back, he had more fun playing it. And it always comes back to the first thing you interact with, your class. Encounters, balancing, comps, and PvP play a big role, and again, it's nice having the space for optimizing and geeking on being a master at your class, but it has to have some limits, because I feel today it's just out of control. Blizz needs to take a look at the level of complexity they have in the game and tone it down 10-20%, maintaining a smaller space for optimization, but lowering the barrier of entry for decent performance, feedback on what you're pressing. And when you are fine just looking to have some fun in the game, we made a video on the most fun range DPS specs you can check right here, if you click it on your screen right now.
I mean, it's an interesting video. I do agree with a lot of the stuff that he's saying, but there's also some things that I definitely don't agree with, I will say. But overall, pretty interesting video here. I think it's definitely something that's very... The whole, like, the game being so convoluted and very complicated is definitely a big reason why the WoW player base is so divided between classic and retail as well nowadays, right?